Like imagine being raised to think you need medication for ADHD when the reality is you just need to go run. Like you just need to go play. You need recess. Like that's it. Like imagine you grow up thinking you don't have the ability to focus and you're a disruptive kid and that's why you can't succeed in the system and you're gonna be nothing. When the reality is you probably just need a hike. Like that's it.
Hello and welcome to Not the Easy Way. This is our second episode with Ed Latimore. Ed Latimore is a retired boxer. He is a great chess player. He also has a physics degree and he grew up in the projects in America. He has been helping young men better their lives, and he's a real pundit for self-development and self-improvement. In this episode, we talk about masculinity. We talk about young boys and the messages they may be receiving in society. We talk about toxic masculinity. We talk about if boys, in fact, need a different approach in terms of supporting their mental health. We hope it'll be a really interesting episode. Enjoy. You're saying there is by pushing yourself to face real challenge and adversity, the learning that comes from that generalizes and helps you to do other challenging things in your life. So as opposed to being stuck and saying I'm not taking any steps, by facing something really, really challenging, I get the strength to face all those other challenging things.
Yeah, I call it turning down the noise, man. After you've been in the ring, and you've been hit hard, and you have to continue and hit hard back and still defend and hold yourself together. You can't just, the fight or flight is going crazy, but you won't make it very far if you give into it. So you've got to get that under control, and that does wondrous things for your ability to deal with stress in other areas in your life. And that's all it is. Everything is just stress. Whether it's learning how an equation works, or dealing with a family situation, or getting up and going to the gym every day. It's all stress. And the better you learn to deal with it, the better you are at turning down the noise. You realize that most things don't matter except for what's going on kind of right here that you need to put your mind on, and you put your energy into that fully, and you're able to manage the stress that activity produces, and you're going to do pretty darn well.
No, I was going to say, Ed, I'm interested that your advice, because the question was advice to young men about masculinity, and really it was kind of to turn down the noise or focus on doing something hard and learning from that, as Peter was saying, generalizing. Because we've been having some discussions recently about young men's mental health and why, there's a lot of talk about why they're not accessing kind of talk therapy. And we've been exploring the idea that actually for a lot of young men, what they don't necessarily need or what they're not seeking, or is that idea of just talking about how they're feeling. They need to put something into action and experience it and learn through. Sure. Yeah, but we get a lot of pushback as psychologists on that idea at the moment.
I'm about to. Yeah, I was going to say I'm about to say something that's gonna push, maybe get the pushback, maybe not. I don't know. I think a year of difficult things, like we'll say, we'll just use fighting. I think a real challenging fight and training and that lifestyle is going to do more for a person, for at least a man's mental health, than 10 years of talking about it. Because if you go and talk about it, right, if you're just talking about it, well, first, now you're dealing with all these feelings, and you don't really, I'm sure you guys have a process for dealing with it, but that process likely involves more things that are not physical, right? So it's kind of a self-referential treatment, and that never works because you don't have a new frame of reference to compare to, or to work towards, or to distance yourself from the original frame that you're working with. It's all coming back to you, and the mere fact that you are there, well, what the heck? That's kind of the issue. You were there because you have a problem. Now we're going to talk about it, and then I'm going to give you some stuff to do with you and the problem, but you still have the problem. So what are we going to do? Now it's just a loop, okay? But if I tell you, okay, you come into my office. Let's pretend I'm a psychologist. You come to my office and you tell me you got these issues. I'm going to tell you first, you feel like you're strong. But how strong do you feel? You feel capable, you feel strong, you feel good. I'm gonna okay, we're gonna get you and we're gonna do fight therapy. We're not going to fight. I'm gonna train you and discipline you to do it the right way. Because we're not just going in there to throw blows. No, we're gonna like put your mind on a thing to help you that forces you to be disciplined. That forces you to have good habits. Where there's a strong negative feedback mechanism. We're gonna get you in touch with reality in a great way. There's no more distancing yourself from reality. You don't get to live in your head. Once you feel capable after a year, then we're going to introduce you to some we'll call them purely emotional challenges. If you got to deal with a problem with someone, we're going to have you talk directly to them. No, straight shooting and go for it. And before that may have been terrifying, but if you've been hooked, beat up, hurt, you didn't spar in the ring where everyone's looking at you and you learned how to focus, well, we're going to reference those experiences and help you talk to people now. Help you deal with the issues. If you got to make amends with somebody, or you got to confront an abuser or an attacker or something like that, you're going to have a lot more confidence in your ability to do so after you put yourself to this ring and made yourself strong. I don't know how that applies to girls. I have no idea. I don't have daughters. I'm not a girl, and like that. But I know as a guy, that is how a lot of men need to deal with stuff. And I think we've done a tremendous disservice to both sexes in different ways by trying to ignore and downplay our differences. And that is done so much. Like humans are incredible. We can justify and rationalize any nonsense. But like when you look at I'm looking at you. I don't know if people can see the video or not, but I'm looking at you, Peter. I'm looking at you, Claire. And no one in their brain would ever go, these two people are they're the same, right? No, your brains are different, anatomically you're different, your experiences as a result of those differences are different. For all intents and purposes, you're not even speaking the same language most of the time, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that's like something that we have.
And I suppose what you're saying there, Ed, is if there is such differences, such clear differences that we could probably mostly agree on, then that men and women might benefit from different approaches to supporting their mental health.
And here's what's crazy. That is common. That is a logical statement that follows the premise that we've said that no one disagrees with. No one disagrees with the premise that men or women are anatomically and neurochemically different, right? Which leads to different experiences in reality, which leads to different experiences, different traumas, different ways of working through them. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. But the moment you follow the next premise, follow that premise to its logical conclusion that we should have different treatment methods for different genders, they're like, oh goodness, no, everyone, let's not focus on that.
And I suppose, one of the reasons why we set up Not the Easy Way, in a way, is we felt that there was a certain group of young people, young boys, that we felt may benefit from a different approach and can sometimes be marginalised. And actually, I guess, one of the biggest risk factors for most awful things in life, like suicide, drug use, going to prison, the biggest risk factor is being male, and
yes,
and so, but I think, in some of the conversations that we have in psychology, there can be this tendency to maybe place the blame on men for that, to say, well, the reason why we have a lot of suicide or mental health issues amongst men is because they don't talk about their feelings. They don't open up. They need to open up and talk about their feelings more like women do.
As we like to say, that one of the big things about the way men are treated today. They're treated like defective girls. And I did a great presentation about this. I'm kind of surprised you guys didn't find it, because that now that I kind of understand what the premise is, I did a great presentation about this, where I talked about some of the areas where men are being I won't say let down. That's the wrong word. Where men lead, and they're not good areas you want to lead in. Boys are diagnosed for ADHD at almost 4 times the rate of girls. The male suicide rates, what the number I got was 9x in general, and like 3x after post relation, like after a breakup. No one talks about that. The homeless population is a big deal. And there's one in the United States. There is one battered men's shelter compared to there's over 1,200 the last I looked. And then these numbers continue to go on. When we ignore the fact that men and women are different, we try and treat them the same, and they're not the same. And usually, what ends up happening is that guys get the worst of both worlds. Is what it seems like. They don't get the support for their unique way of dealing with the world. And I don't say unique like they're unique. It doesn't mean there's men, women, and overall we just have different strategies, different brains, and different abilities. So men aren't getting the treatments because we've decided that the female treatment is great for everyone. And I think it would be just as bad if we did it the other way around. Like probably like how things would look, I would imagine, around the turn of the century. Not this one, the other century, the 1900s, is where everything was focused around men. But now as humans, we gotta go, okay, they're different, treat them kind of different as a whole, and see where that goes.
And I suppose going back to the kind of theme of toxic masculinity, then lastly, I suppose, what could be the impact on young boys if they are, as you put it, getting the message that they are defective women, so that the way they are interacting with the world is less helpful than the way women interact with the world? For example, talking about their feelings, being open, about those things.
You start thinking something's wrong with you, and weirdly, there's nothing wrong with you. There is something wrong with the system you put in. Like imagine being raised to think you need medication for ADHD, when the reality is you just need to go run. Like you just need to go play. You need recess. Like that's it. Like imagine you grow up thinking you don't have the ability to focus, and you're a disruptive kid, and that's why you can't succeed in the system, and you're gonna be nothing. When the reality is you probably just need a hike. Like that's it. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like because if we were recognizing, like if ADHD was like I'm not saying it's not a thing, but if it affected both sexes equally, right? If it was sex dependent, we should expect to see, or independent, we should expect to see rates increase in both. About equal. But the fact that we're seeing guys be diagnosed at 4 to 5 times the rate than girls, that tells us that something with how guys are made is not compatible with this, and to treat them like such, to try and get them closer to what we've decided the norm is, which by the way what's the word I want? Distance from the mean, whatever that word is. Oh, the standard deviation word.
Yeah.
The way that would work out would be, well, it would look more. It would be more in line with females than men. So we're trying to get guys to act like girls. But the reality is they probably just need to go run around. They probably just need to go do some things.
Ed suggested that to improve your mental health, a year of doing difficult things would be better for you than 10 years of talking. How do you think doing difficult things would help?
Ed believes that in society, boys can be viewed as defective girls, meaning that if boys acted more like girls, they would have better lives. What do you think of this idea? Do you agree?
What challenges could you set for yourself that you think might improve your focus and your discipline, which Ed suggests are so important?